Have you ever seen, like, a D&D game go completely sideways? Like, in a good way? Because of, like, some crazy thing a player did?
Oh, absolutely. That's like the best part of D&D, right? When a character pulls off something totally unexpected, because of how they interpret the rules or just sheer audacity,
Yeah.
and it becomes like a legendary story everyone tells.
It's like that's what keeps us coming back. Speaking of legendary, just last night we were playing our campaign and facing a coven of hags.
Ah, hags.
Yeah,
Tricky.
yeah, they're a pain. So we've got our halfling rogue, right?
Okay.
And he's not exactly intimidating physically.
Gotcha.
Anyway, he decides the best way to deal with these magic slinging hags is to, well, he starts juggling these weird
Sibling
fruits.
against hags.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, no, right? He picked them up earlier in the session, these tamarind things.
Oh, Tamara.
Yeah, tamarins.
Yeah.
So he's juggling, and somehow, through a series of ridiculous skill checks, he manages to distract one of the hags while she's casting a spell, and the spell backfires on her own allies.
Oh.
It was amazing. The whole table was in stitches. It just goes to show you, sometimes the most unexpected move can be the most effective, and it kind of ties into what we're diving into today, right?
Yeah.
Barbarians in D&D. Those
Yeah.
masters of controlled chaos.
Exactly. And specifically, we're going to be talking about how to really unleash their potential, especially their rage. We've been digging into some great insights from LitRPG Reads, specifically their article, Essential Tips to Maximize Your Barbarian's Rage and Damage Output in D&D. If you're wanting to play a barbarian, or already are but want to make them hit even harder, this is for you.
Okay, so barbarians. Most people, when they think of a barbarian, they think big, strong, wild.
Yeah.
Someone who just charges into battle without a second thought.
Right. It's the classic image.
But there's got to be more to it than that, right? Like, what's the core concept, the driving force behind the barbarian class?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's more than just mindless rage. It's about harnessing that inner fury, that primal energy, and turning it into a weapon. Amplifying your strength, your resilience. Like, imagine tapping into this deep well of raw emotion and transforming yourself.
Like a Hulk out moment.
Yeah, exactly. The article actually uses that analogy, embracing your inner Hulk, and it's pretty accurate.
But it's not just random anger, right? The article talks about the backstory being important.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The source of that rage matters. It gives depth to the character, both in how you play them and in understanding their motivations. Like, are they fueled by the ancient traditions of their tribe, worshiping powerful spirits? Or maybe it's a burning need for vengeance, a response to some terrible injustice they suffered.
Makes sense. So when a barbarian rages, in D&D terms, what happens? What are the benefits?
So the rage ability is like the heart of the barbarian. When they enter a rage, they get this bonus to their melee weapon damage rolls.
So they hit harder.
Way harder. And on top of that, they gain resistance to most physical damage. Bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, the kind they're most likely to face in close combat.
So it's a great defensive and offensive boost.
Exactly. It makes them a force to be reckoned with. But it's not unlimited. They have a certain number of rages they can use per day.
Oh, so you can't just be raging all the time.
No, it has a duration, and you have to be smart about when you use it.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, there's another ability that always sounds interesting. Reckless attack.
Yeah, that one's a gamble.
So what's the risk? What's the reward?
Okay, so when a barbarian uses reckless attack, they get advantage on all their melee weapon attack rolls for that turn, meaning you roll twice and take the higher number, so you're more likely to hit, more likely to score a critical hit.
Sounds pretty good. Where's the downside?
The catch is, until their next turn, anyone attacking them also gets advantage. So it's a trade-off, more power, more risk.
You're basically trading defense for offense.
Exactly. So you got to use it strategically. Like, if you absolutely need to land that hit, maybe against a weakened enemy, or when you know your allies can protect you.
So it's about thinking ahead, planning.
Exactly.
Now, there's another ability that seems almost like a sixth sense danger sense.
Oh, that one's amazing for survival.
Yeah.
It basically gives them a heightened awareness of danger, a sort of primal instinct. They get advantage on dexterity saving throws against things they can see coming.
Like traps, for instance.
Yeah, traps, spells, even certain monster abilities that require quick reactions.
So it's like they can almost anticipate what's coming.
Exactly. It helps them avoid or at least lessen the impact of a lot of dangers.
Okay, so we've got a good sense of what makes barbarian tick, but when you're actually building a barbarian character, where do you start? I mean, besides the obvious, like maxing out strength.
Well, strength is definitely key. It determines how hard you hit, how much you can carry, lets you wield those massive weapons that make a statement.
You want that huge axe or greatsword to really pack a punch.
Exactly. But constitution is super important too. It's your durability, your ability to take a hit and keep fighting.
Like hit points.
Yep, hit points. If your constitution is low, you're going to be fragile. One good hit and you're down, like a poorly made souffle.
You want to be tough, not crumbly.
Right. You need that constitution to stay in the fight and keep the pressure on your enemies.
So strength and constitution, those are the big ones. What about dexterity? I feel like that's often overlooked for barbarians.
It is, and that's a mistake. Dexterity might not seem as essential for a heavily armored warrior, but it plays a bigger role than you might think.
How so?
Well, for starters, it contributes to your armor class, especially if you're not wearing heavy armor, which a lot of barbarians don't.
Yeah, I can see that.
More importantly, though, dexterity governs your dexterity saving throws. Remember danger sense. A decent dexterity score means you're better at dodging fireballs, avoiding traps, stuff like that.
So dexterity can actually keep you alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also helps with initiative. Acting first in combat can be a huge advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. So building a barbarian, it's not just about being strong, it's about being agile and tough as well.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot where you can dish out punishment and take it too. The article calls it a delicate dance.
Now, as a barbarian levels up, gains experience, their abilities evolve, right? Their gear, their fighting style.
Oh yeah, totally. As you level up, you get new features, you improve existing ones, and your tactical options expand. You might start finding magical weapons that really complement your rage, or defensive items that help make up for maybe not wearing heavy armor.
Like enchanted armor or weapons that do more damage.
Exactly. And you got to keep adapting, reevaluating your tactics to make the most of those new powers.
Right, because the challenges change too.
Exactly.
So speaking of specialization, the article goes into primal paths, which is where things get really interesting for barbarians, right? It's like choosing their subclass.
Absolutely. At third level, every barbarian picks a primal path. And that choice really shapes how they fight, their whole character concept. Different paths lead to vastly different playstyles.
And the first one that always comes to mind is the path of the berserker. That's like the classic all-out rage image, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Berserkers, they're all about going absolutely berserk, unleashing pure, unadulterated fury. They get this feature called frenzy, letting them attack even more while raging.
So they just attack, attack, attack.
Basically, they become a whirlwind of destruction.
But there has to be a downside.
Oh, there is. After the rage ends, they suffer from exhaustion.
Exhaustion, what does that do?
Well, it makes everything harder. Moving, attacking, making saving throws.
So it's a big cost for that extra power.
Yep. Berserkers can be devastating for short bursts, but you got to be careful not to burn yourself out.
Makes sense. Now, what about the path of the totem warrior? That one seems a bit more, I don't know, spiritual.
Yeah, totem warriors are all about connecting with nature, with the spirits of animals. They choose a totem animal, like a bear, eagle, or wolf, and they get different benefits depending on their choice.
So like different animal powers.
Exactly. For instance, bear totem gives you resistance to almost all damage types. You become super tough.
You're basically a walking tank.
Pretty much. Eagle totem gives you enhanced movement, lets you fly over obstacles, dash as a bonus action. Wolf totem actually benefits your allies, giving them advantage on attacks against enemies near you.
So they're a bit more strategic, adaptable.
Exactly. Totem warriors can fill a variety of roles in a party.
Then there's the ancestral guardian, which always sounded really cool to me.
Oh yeah, ancestral guardians. They call upon the spirits of their ancestors to help them in battle. It's a cool blend of offense and defense. When they rage and hit an enemy, these spectral guardians appear and basically distract that enemy, making it harder for them to attack anyone else. They also reduce the damage the enemy deals to others.
So they're protecting their allies, too.
Exactly. They can dish out damage while also being this sort of guardian figure.
So choosing a primal path isn't just about picking the coolest abilities. You got to think about the party composition, your character's background, the campaign setting.
Absolutely. You want to consider whether your party needs a tank, a damage dealer, someone more versatile.
Right, right.
Does the chosen path fit your character's personality, their backstory?
That makes sense.
And think about the campaign setting. Certain paths might be more advantageous in certain environments.
Yeah, I'm seeing the depth here. It's not just a mechanical choice.
Nope. And don't forget to talk to your DM.
The dungeon master.
Yeah. They might have ideas for how your chosen path could lead to some really cool story moments.
I like that. So You've built your barbarian, you've chosen your path. What about gear? Weaponry. A barbarian with a twig isn't going to be very intimidating, right?
Haha, no, definitely not. The right gear can make a huge difference. Since strength is your main stat for damage, you want to choose strength-based melee weapons.
So great swords, mauls, that kind of thing.
Yeah, those are great choices. They deal a lot of damage. You want that satisfying feeling of crushing your enemies.
Okay, what about armor? I feel like a lot of barbarian players choose mobility over heavy protection.
They do. Some barbarians, they rely on their natural toughness, their constitution, maybe their dexterity, to avoid getting hit.
So they're not always wearing full plate armor.
Not always. It can hinder their movement, their fighting style. The article even jokes about how, for some barbarians, skin is a fortress of pure rage.
I love that.
But magical items can help compensate for that.
Mm.
Enchanted weapons, rings, cloaks, things that boost your attack rolls, damage, or defense.
So even without heavy armor, they can be pretty tough.
Oh, absolutely. And the article provides a handy table listing different weapon types and suggested magical enhancements for each.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Like a sword of sharpness for a great sword.
Exactly. Or a maul at Titans for a maul, a flame tongue for a longsword. They can really amp up your damage output.
Awesome. But you got to adapt your gear too, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the challenge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You might face a creature that's vulnerable to a specific type of damage, so you'll want to switch to a weapon that exploits that weakness.
Right.
Or maybe you need a weapon that has a special ability, like a frost brand, to slow down a particularly fast enemy.
Right, right. So you're geared up, ready to rage, but rage isn't something you can just use whenever you want, right?
No, it's a limited resource.
Yeah.
You got to be smart about when you use it.
So you can't just rage every fight.
Not if you want to be effective.
Okay, so strategically, when's the best time to rage?
Well, save it for the big fights, the ones that really matter. When you're facing multiple enemies or when your hit points are low and you need that extra durability.
Makes sense.
Or maybe when you're going up against a really tough enemy, one that can hit hard.
So choosing your moments.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to waste your rages on minor encounters. And don't forget to coordinate with your party.
Oh, yeah, how so?
Well, if your spellcasters are about to unleash a big area of effect spell, that's a good time to rage. Draw the enemy's attention, make sure they're grouped up.
So the spell hits as many as possible.
Exactly. Teamwork makes the dream work.
It's like you always say, D&D is a team sport. And that reminds me, the barbarian, how do they typically function within a party?
Well, they're often the ones on the front line, drawing enemy attacks, protecting the more squishy members of the party. They can take a beating while raging.
They're like a tank.
Yeah, like a tank, a damage dealer, that kind of thing. They disrupt enemy formations, create openings for their allies.
But they can't do everything, right?
Right. They're not usually good at ranged attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and they might not have a lot of crowd control abilities. They need their teammates to handle those things.
So it's all about synergy, working together.
Exactly. Knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses, communicating, planning your attacks.
That's what makes D&D so fun.
Totally agree.
Now, here's something I found interesting in the article, the idea of bringing humor into a barbarian character.
Oh, yeah. It's a great way to make your character stand out, be more memorable.
Because we don't always think of barbarians as, funny.
Right. We tend to think of them as serious, brooding, always angry. But you can have a barbarian who's also hilarious. The contrast can be really entertaining.
Give me some examples.
Like imagine a huge, intimidating barbarian who has this secret love for fluffy kittens.
Or maybe they collect teacups.
Yeah. Or maybe they have these ridiculous battle cries. Instead of roaring, they yell something like, "Time to meet your maker," and tell them I said hi.
Or for fluffy kittens.
Exactly. It's about those little unexpected quirks that make them more relatable, more human.
Humanizes them a bit.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean they can't be serious when they need to be.
It just adds another layer to the character.
Right. And don't underestimate the power of a barbarian who finds joy in the simple things, like a really good meal after a tough battle.
I like that. So the barbarian isn't just this static archetype. They can grow, evolve, become more than just a fighter.
Definitely. As they level up, they get stronger, but they can also develop as a character.
You can learn to control their rage, maybe?
Yeah, maybe they start to understand the source of their anger, try to channel it in a more positive way. And as they face tougher challenges, they have to adapt their tactics.
It's like they're constantly learning, growing.
Exactly. It's about going from a raw, inexperienced brawler to a seasoned strategic warrior.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of D&D barbarians. So much more to them than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
It's about strategic thinking, making smart choices during character creation, knowing when to rage, working well with your party, and even adding a bit of humor.
It's about finding that balance between raw power and strategy.
Big thanks to LitRPG Reads for their fantastic article, Essential Tips to Maximize Your Barbarian's Rage and Damage Output in D&D.
Yeah, it was a great starting point for our discussion today.
And a shout out to Paul Bello for being such a prominent figure in the LitRPG and D&D community.
Absolutely.
Now, we want to hear from you, our listeners. Have you played a barbarian? What are your favorite barbarian strategies?
Or any funny barbarian stories.
Share them in the comments below. And let us know what you think about the barbarian in 1D&D.
We're always eager to hear your thoughts and experiences. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.